Set 100 years before the events of Xenosaga Episode 1, Xenosaga Pied Piper tells the story of cyborg Ziggurat 8 in his former life as human counter-terrorist agent Jan Sauer, working for the Galactic Federation. It centers on Sauer's team as they track a serial killer known by the hacker alias Voyager, who stalks and murders his victims, mostly children, inside the U.M.N, or Unus Mundus network. The squad is deployed to the planet Abraxas to investigate these murders and bring Voyager to justice. As Jan carries out his investigations, he meets Dr. Sharon Rozas, and over time the two fall in love and get married. As Jan's investigation gets closer to unveiling Voyager's identity, it becomes clear that high-ranking officials in the Galactic Federation are connected to Voyager and attempt to shut Jan and his team down. After escaping arrest and finally unveiling Voyager as Erich Weber, a member of his own team, Jan is forced to watch Sharon and her son murdered in front of his eyes and chooses to take his own life rather than be used by corrupt higher powers or be killed by Voyager. His body is reclaimed and recycled, which leads to him becoming the cyborg Ziggurat 8. I forgot and somehow underestimated how difficult it is to talk about Xeno games.
That's totally true.
Like,
it's so true.
Oh my goodness, dude. Within the opening few lines of this game, like after you get through the part where Joaquin goes into the U.M.N and Voyager's there reading Revelation 16 or whatever.
Yeah.
And you get Jan. I'm going to call him Jan. I know it's not pronounced that way in Xenosaga 2, but it's hard for me to say Jan instead of Jan. So I'm going to say Jan. Sorry, everybody. I'm saying Jan. Jan is being like briefed by Erich as he arrives at Abraxas.
Which sounds very like Dune, right?
It kind of does.
Arrakis?
It kind of does sound like that, yeah. It gets retermed or renamed as Mictum at the end.
That's right, yeah.
Anyway. Already.
I know.
Technicalities.
Different names for things.
The first like 3 lines they say back and forth to each other, I already had like 17 tabs open to Xenosaga Wiki trying to remember what the F all of this stuff is.
Yeah.
It is exhausting work to prepare to talk about a Xeno game.
Exhausting, but rewarding.
But super rewarding.
Very rewarding. Yes. It's so fun.
Now, after the 2 weeks of preparation I've done, going through that, reading the script, watching the only video I think that exists online of anyone playing that game.
In any good quality, yeah.
I'm feeling a lot more comfortable with all the terminology again and very excited for getting into Xenosaga 2, which will begin next week.
Yeah.
But man, the feeling, the hopelessness almost, the sunken like, oh crap moment
and then,
of reading dialogue from a Xeno game going, oh gosh, no, not again.
You know what's funny? You say this as somebody reading a translation of it, but think of the translator.
I know.
Right? Think of what a monumental task translating any of these games would be.
Just unbelievable. But I think I've got my mind wrapped around it all again. I'm feeling confident. And I do like the story of Pied Piper quite a bit.
I do too. The overall general story is quite good. I want to ask before we get started if anybody out there in the comment section has ever actually played the actual game. It is not a game that you can find anymore. Not for at least a decade, probably more. It's difficult to download. I think you have to buy a phone pre-installed with it if you want it now. And people probably sell those on eBay for a decent amount of money. But I'm wondering if anybody's actually played it, because it seemed from the playthrough that I watched that sometimes you'll overshoot an area and then you got to go back, and that the controls might be a little bit difficult. Yeah, I'd be very curious to see if anybody's actually played it, because I don't think very many people played this game.
I mean, we're talking about you have your hands on the little phone and you're playing that game. Actually played it, which I would assume be anybody out there who's in Japan watching us or something like that.
And I would assume it's very few of you, but please comment if you have, because I would love to hear about what that experience was like, especially when they first came out.
I don't think there are very many people out there who have actually played Pied Piper, but probably only a few more than that have even seen the game, because there's, as far as I know, of only like one playlist on YouTube of a guy playing the game.
Of a full, yeah.
And he kind of goes through the text a little fast, and so the captions, which are translated into English, move a little quickly. But there is a script on the Xenosaga wiki where you can read it. So I'm sure there are people out there who have done that. But I'm guessing that, generally speaking, in terms of like the size of the audience who would typically watch our Xeno stuff, I'm sure the pool is even smaller
for this game. Oh my gosh.
For people who've actually played this. So there may be some people interested in the story and whatnot.
Right.
Maybe what we should do first is do the obvious reference, which is in the title of the game, to Pied Piper.
Yeah, let's go into that.
And talk about what that is.
Yeah. So
let's talk a little bit about Pied Piper. I'm going to hand this to you. I read it in the Brothers Grimm.
Yeah.
But I wanted to hand this to you to kind of recap.
I have a dozen versions of this book in my home. I've read several different. There's a lot of different versions. A lot of them come more recently. There are things like happy ending. The kids all get to come back in the end. Right. But the real story is a little bit darker than that. I remember when I first read it to my children, they were like, this is not a good story. But I was like, yes, but it's an important story because the kids don't come back. So basically, there's a town, it's called Hamlin, and they have a rat infestation. And so the city has kind of put a ton of pressure on the mayor to kind of fix this problem. He doesn't know how to do it. But somebody shows up who claims to be able to solve this problem for them by the mere playing of a flute. And the mayor doesn't believe him. And so the mayor promises him a lot of money. Way too much. Because the citizens and I'll give you, like half the treasury to get rid of these rats. So the Pied Piper says, all right, I'll take you up on that. So he plays his music, and miraculously enough, all the rats just kind of follow him over to the pier. It's like a port town, or I think it's a river, and they just jump into the water and drown themselves. They all die. All the rats are gone.
You want to know what my favorite game that references this is Majora's Mask. You know that mask you can get with the flute, and all the animals will start following you as you're playing.
That's so fun, dude. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Anyway, that's a Pied Piper reference too.
Yes. Now he drowns all the rats, kills them all, and then he goes to the mayor and says, "All right, that'll be whatever you promised me. Tons of money, please." And the mayor says, "Oh, that's so cool that you got rid of the rats. Thank you so much. Here's like a little pittance for your troubles." And the Pied Piper's like, "You didn't pay me for this." Or no, you promised me more than this, right? Pay up. And the mayor says, "I'm sorry, we actually don't have the money." He's got all his little political speak for why, I can't do it, various things and all the reasons. But we appreciate your work and see you later, right? Now that the job is done, Pied Piper has no leverage to actually get money. He should have killed half the rats first, shown that he can do it, then demanded payment up front, and then killed the rest of the rats. Anyways, so Pied Piper says, okay, well, if you fail to pay the piper, then I'll take it out of you some other way, right? So what is it? The next morning, the sun comes up. It's a beautiful morning. The children are all out playing, and then music just begins to play. It begins to just kind of fill the air, and the children are captivated. And all of the children from Hamlin, except one, I think there was one kid who he had a crutch. He was little tiny Tim. He couldn't walk very well. But other than that one kid, and he still tried to follow them, but he just was a little bit too slow. The Piper leads every child from the whole village of Hamlin out of the city and into the side of a mountain, basically. There's like a little cave. And then the mountain closes behind him. And you don't really hear from the kids again. Like, that's it. The story's over. You didn't pay the Piper. Now you pay the price. And the price is the future of the town, right? This town now has no future. And if you don't pay the proper price now, this is something, there's like fractional reserve banking or things like inflation, or there's all sorts of policies where it's like, okay, you try to pay, or like just national debt in general. Oh, you kick the can down the road. But the price for that eventually is your future. You're stealing from the future to have what you want in the present. And at some point it will completely destroy your society. Right. And so The Pied Piper takes the kids away. Some versions say, oh, the kids played and had fun in a paradise forever, but they never came back. Some stories says that the kids came back. But I think the original story that is typically referred to in this is that the kids are just gone and nobody knows what happened.
Yeah.
And they just are upset now. We should have paid the Piper. Why didn't we pay him when we had the chance?
Yeah.
Now our future is stolen from us.
I think in the version that I read, there were 3 kids that couldn't follow who were left behind. There was one who was lame, like you said,
that's
couldn't
the one
keep
I
up.
remember, yeah.
One who was blind and couldn't see where they were going, and one who was deaf and who couldn't be lulled by the music.
Oh, there you go.
And so those 3 were left behind
Yeah.
to like tell all the people at church like what happened to their kids because they were all at church.
Right, because they didn't know. They didn't,
Yeah. Anyway, so that's the story being referenced in this character, Voyager, who uses the U.M.N. to like sort of lull and then kill his victims.
Right. I remember after I read this to my daughter once too, she said, Daddy, what if I hear the music? What should I do? And I'm just like, well, that's why you just, don't, what did I say? I can't remember what I said. Something like, don't listen to music that takes you away from your family. That was one of the things that I said.
Nice.
That's a very typical dad thing to say because once she's a teenager, that goes out the window.
She won't care anymore. They won't care.
But I had to say something.
Yeah.
But it really affected my kids, this story. It's a very powerful story.
Yeah. It's really good. I mean, a lot of these older, German or whatever sort of myths and legends and folk tales are really cool. I'm guessing that the immigrant fleet, which is something we'll talk about here in a second, must have preserved some kind of, what do you call it? What's the library? That's actually, I would
Alexandria.
No. The U.S. Library of Congress.
They just call it Library of Congress. Yeah.
That documents like really important.
They do.
Actually,
but they
you know
have
what?
so much there. There's so much.
You know what? Yeah. In fact, I'm thinking almost that must be the explanation for this because in Xenoblade
like
Chronicles X, they have the Library of Congress stored onto like 3 different drives. And there's a mission where you have to try to recover one of these because they're being destroyed on this planet. And it's like, we're going to lose like our entire history of Earth if we don't recover these things. So it's probably something like
Library of Congress.
that the immigration fleet carried with them from Lost Jerusalem. And so some of these things must have been preserved somehow. Anyway, a little bit of a tangent there. I really, really liked the opening of the game. The very first scene.
Yeah, with the kid and he's out. Yeah.
I felt like it's a really strong opening.
Oh, it was very good. And the cloaked figure just shows up and it's just like, what? Who's there? Oh, I guess nobody's there. I'm here alone, But he says a few lines from the Bible. I
loved how it was a kid essentially playing a video game.
Yes. There's a Matrix. There's some strong Matrix themes here.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the U.M.N. is the way I described it in the intro at the beginning of the video is not quite right. Like it's like the shallow sort of summary of what the U.M.N. is.
Yeah.
It's like this virtual reality internet that connects these 5,000 planetary systems that the Galactic Federation sort of is, has jurisdiction over. It essentially allows people to talk instantaneously, almost like we do now on the internet. It's like the internet,
yeah.
But across vast freaking amounts of space, right? Yeah. Which is, I mean, even if we were to talk to our robots that are on Mars or something, it takes like 30-something minutes for that message to come back, right? So if we're talking about, intergalactic communication, it would take so much longer than that through normal means to send communications. But the U.M.N. allows that to happen instantly. Yeah. So there's something deeper about it that even the people who invented it don't actually understand.
They don't know what they actually hit on. Yes. Right. And also, at least the way that this kind of works when you're using the U.M.N., it has more access to your brain, right? There's I don't know, there's a way in which, at least in the game here, that if you die in the game, you die in the real, right? It's like it's a common kind of trope.
Your brain is hooked up to it. Matrix is a good, I think, way to just sort of get people the idea.
Yeah. You need to go to a special place to log out. If your plug gets pulled too early, you die.
Yeah. And outside of it just being a form of communication, and we touched on this in our Xenosaga 1 podcast, but they also use it for like traveling. There are gates and things that they use the U.M.N. to go from place to place. So it's more than just like a giant galactic internet. It's more than that. But that's the easiest way to give people the idea in short form way.
This actually lends a little bit more credence to the Carl Jung stuff surviving a little bit longer, because at the very least, according to Einsteinian physics, nothing can go faster than the speed of light.
Yeah.
And you're describing a system of transferring data at faster than the speed of light.
Yes.
Which would mean that in the world of this game, Einstein's theories are not accurate, which means that we would have to then explore some of the different ideas out there of how the universe works. And Carl Jung is one that comes to mind.
This brings to my mind a little bit more quantum entanglement type technology.
Exactly. Some of the stuff that very recently has been proven and Nobel Prizes awarded.
Where two particles somehow are connected, and no matter what distance between them, they react to each other instantaneously.
And that destroys our entire model of physics. But, it's true.
What are you going to do about it?
It seems true. I don't know. It seems true.
What are you going to do about it?
That's where you got to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, well, who else had some ideas? All right, Carl Jung. All right, Carl Jung.
So
let's see his stuff.
Speaking of the U.M.N. or Unus Mundus network, we should probably touch on Carl Jung real
Unus
quick.
Mundus
and
is
the
one
idea of
world.
the Unus Mundus and what that is.
That everything's connected. Everything's connected is the idea. Yeah. And in particular, Carl Jung would say everything, at least within humans, and probably he would even take this further to say even animals and all the way back the evolutionary chain, that we are all connected through some ethereal power, some force that is natural. It's natural. It's not necessarily supernatural. It could be, but it doesn't necessarily have to be.
Yeah.
But that we're all connected through this shared unconscious like wiring almost. So the collective unconscious is how humans have this deep connection with each other that goes all the way back through the evolutionary chain, but it likely even goes beyond that and possibly even is a latent part of the universe itself.
Yeah. So the U.M.N. is in some way sort of tapping into that collective unconscious, and that is how it is able to connect people in this way instantaneously. They do bring up terms like collective unconscious, the shadow, persona. These are all Jungian terms.
Yeah.
We'll try to address them each as they kind of come up as we go through this. But the collective unconscious in particular, and the fact that Udo, which is
Udo.
I'm not sure how much I want to say about this yet, just because we haven't gotten into Xenosaga 2 and 3 yet.
Let's wait. But it's a thing.
But
Udo's a thing.
It's a, let's call it a supernatural power based on what we know from the first Xenosaga, that is at the core of this Unus Mundus network.
Yeah.
And so anyways.
And it's red. Whatever that means.
Yeah. So that's what the U.M.N. is. So this kid in the opening scene is like hacking, like not hacking, going into the virtual reality world of the U.M.N. He wants like a dog there or whatever, and he wants his mom to buy the DLC.
Oh, that was fun. That was fun.
The freaking microtransaction dog.
Because he wants a real looking dog, not a robot one. Yeah.
And she's like, no, basically the way a mom would say, like, no, I'm not buying you more stuff.
Right.
So he's kind of exploring in there. And he hears the voice of Voyager, this serial killer in the network, reading off a verse from Revelation 16.
Right.
And it's very, very ominous. And it struck me a lot now, particularly because of what I do for work, which is anti-human trafficking work.
Right.
And that is something that everyone should be aware of who has kids that are playing games online. That this is currently, I would say, even more so and ramping up since 2020, the lockdowns, a way in which these guys are out there trying to gain contact to your kids. Now, it's not always going to be to meet up in real life or something like that. A lot of times it's going to be sextortion type of stuff where this is a particular problem for boys, where they'll pose as some cute girl or something like that. Hey, send me some pictures, and then once I got the pictures, okay, send me money, or I'm going to start releasing these pictures.
Or I'll send it to your parents.
And
something like
this
that.
leads to suicide. It leads to a lot of really bad problems.
Yeah.
So this game came out a long time ago, but it's amazing how real a problem this kind of thing is in the real world. And so it just really struck me as a very heavy-hitting opening scene.
Yeah.
Hit a little bit close to home for me. And of course, Joaquin just kind of hears it and then goes on. And Joaquin is a character who needs to be alive for later. I thought, man, had they even gone one step further and made this not Joaquin, but just some other kid who's a victim, that would have just been like, oh my gosh, what a way to set up your villain. Like that's a villain that you despise completely now.
Right away.
I don't know what could be worse.
Yeah. I wonder if in a phone game, I don't know. I wonder if they needed to ease people into that. Because at the very least, Joaquin is a victim. He just isn't right then.
At that moment.
It's like he's being scouted out for something. Yeah. And of course, I mean, he's a pure sacrifice.
Right.
To be offered to Udu or the U.M.N. as a whole, I guess. Yeah. So that, what is his name? Voyager? Voyager can then kind of gain this new power and this eternal life.
Yeah, but
the sacrifice.
I just loved is maybe a weird word. As far as like the structure of the story, as in like a concept for the story. And a way to make your audience really, really, really hate your villain right away. This is about the best way I can think of doing it. Someone who preys on children in a virtual world or almost video game kind of world. And this is something that happens in real life more often than you would think. And it's one of the most despicable things I think I've ever encountered in my life. And so right away, I was like, Voyager needs to be taken down. So this creates a very strong sense of urgency for this investigation, which is what the story is going to be about, is trying to find out who is Voyager and how do we take him down.
Yeah. Right? And every moment is very precious, right? You can't waste time. We have to catch this guy right now.
Because your victims are children. Like how do you make that more urgent than that? And I guess that is in part sort of the tie to the Pied Piper story too, is the fact that the children are the victims.
Right, yeah.
And how horrifying a thought that is, right?
Yeah. But they're pure, and that's the point. That's why Voyager is going after these kids. He's like, I need pure sacrifice. I need pure souls. Yeah. And this is the weird part, and I didn't quite understand exactly what was going on here, but it was something along the lines of when Voyager kills people, he like traps their soul in his own mind, basically.
Yes.
He's able to kind of like, and I don't know.
Consciousness is preserved somewhere.
Yes. So that they exist with him. Yeah. And then at the end, he says something like, oh, I gain pleasure knowing that all the souls that I have killed are seeing the same thing I'm seeing right now. You know? And that he almost feels like he's offering them salvation.
Right.
Eternal life.
In his sort of twisted way.
Yeah.
Because he came in contact with Udu and saw it as some sort of the end of the world or universe type of thing.
Yeah.
He's thinking that somehow he's preserving these precious souls. Somehow.
Right.
But it ends up not really being that. It's a sacrifice.
No, and when he learns that, he's like, well, what else can I keep doing that's evil? But he kind of seems to have lost his agency too. Like he came in contact with something that he couldn't handle, and it completely changed who he is.
Right.
And the weirdest thing that I don't quite know yet, maybe you could help fill me in on this a little bit, is it because he contacted Udo that he now, is that the reason why he has this power that is so difficult for the police to catch him, and he's so strong and beyond everybody's skill? Is it because of his contact with Udo? Or is there something else special about him?
There is something else special about him, and it's both a strength and a weakness. It's a strength in the sense that it gives him the ability to navigate the U.M.N. the way he does, but it's a brain disorder, a congenital brain disorder.
So the disorder, because I remember the disorder. Yeah. I thought that was just how we identified him, but you're telling me that was part of why he was able to do all this.
It explains in part why he's able to jack in and out almost at will into the U.M.N. and why he's so familiar with it, because he became what's called a netholic. Yeah. He became so addicted to more information because he has a well, we'll get into the brain disorder a little later, but it's difficult to form memories with this specific brain disorder.
Yeah.
So he used the U.M.N. to store his short-term memories
Right.
and to be able to sort of function in the real world a little better. But the result of that was he became just obsessed with more and more information, more and more truth, which led him to the core of the U.M.N. and to contacting Udo, which at that point sort of broke his mind, made him go crazy.
Stop searching for truth, people.
Well,
just kidding.
Yes, yes.
Well, there's the end quote. We'll get into that. We'll get into the end quote. Yeah.
And the limitations of the human mind can lead you. You have to accept that you're not going to know it all.
You have to.
In your pursuit of learning,
you
have to accept kind of like you're never going to get there. Yes. Otherwise, your obsession will get you to a point where you want it so bad you think you're getting it all.
And you think you're just so
you're
close.
Not, actually.
Yeah, you're so far.
And then you start making wrong conclusions and making assumptions that are bad.
And you start sacrificing people.
That's, I think, the cautionary tale with Voyager here.
Yeah, accept the human reality.
Limitation
that you are
of
limited.
Your mind.
Yeah.
Is I think, what's
Very
important
good.
to pull from this. Okay, so let's start. What I wrote here is a lot of names and terms are thrown at the player all at once, which makes it tough to follow. Yeah. I'll try to clarify it. So Erich said, we were now, okay, so let's get to where Jan arrives at the planet Abraxas and is being briefed by Erich Weber. First of all, I thought it was brilliant that they hid their villain in plain sight like this. So
yes, that was brilliant.
Erich Weber is Voyager, and he's the first character that talks to Jen in the whole
That's
thing.
wild.
I loved that.
And you have and even when things get exposed later on, it's like there's this weird almost understanding where he's like, look, I'm not myself anymore.
Yeah.
Right. And it's so, but I did have some Matrix vibes here too, with the guy who betrayed them, who was part of the team and nobody knew. And he starts unplugging everyone.
Yep. So Erich says to him, you probably already know that a large-scale meeting between the Galaxy Federation and the immigrant fleet is planned for next term, which is this meeting they're going to have is called the Pilgrimage Council. So I said, okay, let's define some terms here.
What are all these? Immigrant fleet?
The Galaxy Federation is the easy one.
Yeah.
The Galaxy Federation, or simply known as the Federation, is the body that governs nearly 500,000 planetary systems. I think I said 5,000 earlier. I meant to say 500,000.
Oh, wow.
Planetary systems throughout the known universe and essentially rules and governs humanity in the TC or Transcend Christ era in Xenosaga.
That's right.
The immigration fleet was not a term I'd heard before. So
right. It's in Xenosaga 2, though.
Yeah. Which is why I think it was important to play this game first before Xenosaga 2. The immigrant fleet started as a group of survivors following Ormus, which is a religion, who escaped lost Jerusalem before it was sealed away, using a ship called Pleroma. Pleroma was also in Xenosaga 1.
Yeah.
The immigrant fleet is an organization that wishes to control the Zohar. Both the immigrant fleet and the UTIC organization, who is the antagonist sort of group of the first game, serve as the public persona and military arm of the secret society of Ormus, which is this religion of these people who escaped lost Jerusalem in this immigrant fleet. They carried this religion of Ormus with them. After a long and, well, I will be technically corrected on that point by people I know who really started it. I'm just not sure that's revealed here. Okay. It's probably revealed later. So I just want you to know I know who actually started Ormus. After a long and arduous journey through space, they settled on the planet Abraxas. So the Galaxy Federation and the immigrant fleet are not a united force. They're not necessarily at war or anything, but they're two separate things. So, but they both came from lost Jerusalem. They're both remnants of that civilization of lost Jerusalem. And so they've been having some, what do you call it? Difficulties in their negotiations around this specific planetary system where Abraxas is. Who does this belong to? Who has jurisdiction over this?
Yeah.
And it passes to the Federation, and then it passes back to the immigrant fleet. Currently, it's with the immigrant fleet. And so there's a meeting coming up between...
The Dune connections abound once again. This is Arrakis, you guys.
Sure.
All right.
So in any case, yeah, they are not at war currently, but they're not necessarily on the best terms. There's some tension there.
Right.
And so they have leaders that are meeting together in this pilgrimage council to, make some negotiations and compromises and things of that nature. That's about to come up. However, an event has happened which has thrown a wrench into all of that, and that has to do with Voyager having captured a bunch of the representatives who were supposed to be a part of this council. He's got them hostage currently in the U.M.N. So I got another term here, Abraxas, the first planet settled by the people of the immigrant fleet after they left Lost Jerusalem. After the appearance of the main immigrant fleet, the sovereignty of the planet was essentially transferred to the immigrant fleet nation, and the planet came to be called Abraxas. It became the place where God's relics were kept, primarily the Zohar, and I'm going to hold off on the other two things because I'm not sure we're there yet. But there's other things, God relics, that are kept on this planet. After the events of this game, all domain rights were transferred back to the Galaxy Federation. So after this Pied Piper game happens, it goes back to the Galaxy Federation, and they rename the planet to Mictum.
Mictum, yeah.
So when you hear the term Mictum in future games, they're talking about Abraxas from this game.
Yeah. Very good.
This game it almost goes out of its way sometimes to be confusing. Mictum and Abraxas are the same thing.
And you know what's crazy? We haven't really talked about the way that this game was released. It was episodic. It was not just a single game all at once.
Right.
You had to wait a month or a half a month in order to get each next episode. I can't imagine absorbing a story like this, playing it and then waiting 15 days and then playing a little bit more. I'd have to replay the first part again to remember what's going on and then to go to the next part. And it was over the course of, I think, 3 months or so that the whole game was actually released.
Right.
And that's crazy.
Okay, so Ormus is an ancient religion that originated on Lost Jerusalem, founded by a person I'm not going to say right now. That person claims from the death of that it came from the death of the man Ormus. The man that the religion Ormus worships as their lord. That's where the name came from. It has an organizational structure resembling the Vatican of the Middle Ages. So there's a lot of almost Catholic mass type imagery or organizational structure to
Is
what
that
you're
what we
see
see a little bit
game.
later in this game where the Zohar
like the
shows
priest
up?
that Sharon is sort of talking to when she's offering her prayers and wishes that the violence would end and things like that. So there's a little bit of a Catholic sort of structure to this, right? And it sees, has its own holy book, this Ormus has its own holy book, which it uses as the foundation for its beliefs. And it sees it as the verbatim and divinely inspired word of God. So the literal word of God. While it's plausible that such a book could be the Christian Bible, that's never specified during the Xenosaga plotline.
Although the Bible has survived up to this point, is clear.
Well, obviously, at least Voyager knows of it.
At least Voyager knows of it.
Because he's reading Revelation 16.
And other in Xenosaga 1.
Yeah, in Xenosaga 1, they quote Revelation 20.
As well, yeah.
Chapter 20. So, yeah. Anyway, those writings, at least in part, exist still from the Bible. Followers of Ormus believe that the planet Mictum or Abraxas was the birthplace of Ormus and felt that their true purpose was to return to Lost Jerusalem. They believe that the Zohar is an artifact of divine intervention, and by collecting the relics of God, such as the Zohar and the other ones I'm not talking about yet, they can go back to Lost Jerusalem, which they believe and revere as their holy fatherland. So that's a little bit about Ormus. So, as far as summarizing the investigations themselves, I'm not sure how much of that is necessary.
I don't think so either, but we do need to say at the very least that Jan is going about and he hits a wall where at some point the chief tells him, hey, buddy, just like every cop movie ever, you're off the case. You know, you can't do this. You're not. And then it's hey, I'm so close, though. Give me another chance. And the chief, then it turns out, well, the chief has other pressures from other people that are telling him what to do. It's not all up to him. And it seems like somebody upstairs, one of the higher people, wants this investigation stopped.
Yes.
And so Jan has to kind of continue the investigation on his own,
right.
Without the assistance
without
of the chief.
permission.
Without permission.
He's going beyond the bounds of his
It's every cop movie ever.
Exactly. There is definitely a very specific genre this story fits into.
Yeah.
And it falls a little bit outside of what you typically see in Xeno games. And so I kind of liked that.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a cop drama.
It is, yeah.
In the Xeno universe. And I thought that was a really interesting kind of different take for this particular setting.
Yeah.
I really liked that. But of course, it's going to come with its own set of tropes like you're talking about.
Right.
That being said, there are a number of scenarios that play out here where they are almost about to get to Voyager and then they find out, he eluded us or tricked us or whatever. Or actually, it's not Voyager. He's over here and this was all a ploy by, what's his name, who was the son of the woman who runs the Foundation.
Andrei Yuriev?
Something like
no,
Dmitry Yuriev is the
I can't remember.
Federation officer who does not want them investigating anymore.
Yes.
And tries to get them all shut down and gets Jan's McCollum, I think it was, is his direct supervisor, killed and everything like that and arrests them and stuff.
Yeah, but I can't remember the other person you're talking about.
Klaus Torres, that's his name.
Torres.
Thank you. I mentioned this last week for anybody who watched our episode on Avatar. I am impossible to remember names. It's just impossible. My brain does not function this way.
Yeah.
So anytime you remind me of a name, that would be very helpful. Klaus Torres. So his mother had set up the Torres Foundation, and that was the second scenario. So in the first scenario, these ambassadors, as they're told, are being held captive by Voyager and the U.M.N. The big surprise at the end of that is to find that all these ambassadors are children, which is messed up. Why are you making children your ambassadors? It was all like this sort of ploy to try to get better press for, I think it's Donald Marquand or something like that. Anyway, Donald Marquand, I think, was the one who had set this up. Let me just read that real quick. Amidst a climate of reconciliatory policies between the immigrant fleet and the Galaxy Federation, Donald Marquand was suspected of controlling a far right-wing organization in favor of the Federation. So I guess you would say in this world's far-right camp of politics, they want sort of a unification between the immigrant fleet and the Galaxy Federation and people on the other side. I don't know why that would be. You would think the far right conservative would want to
isolate or
to
close.
Remain like the old ways.
Yes.
The conservative, I don't understand it totally.
Well,
but in any case,
every country has like different, left and right. It's always like slightly different.
Sure. Anyway, he's suspected of being involved with some right-wing, like ultra-far right-wing organization in favor of the Federation instead of the immigrant fleet. In an attempt to wipe away that scandal, he assembles a group of children who had inherited the bloodline of the immigrant fleet, so the pure people of the Zohar, which is kind of part of this whole Ormus religion. It's like we're the children of Israel, essentially.
Sure,
right?
yes,
the true descendants of the immigrant fleet who came from lost Jerusalem.
Yeah.
He gets a whole group of kids who are of that bloodline.
Right.
So to prove, no, I'm with you guys who are true to the immigrant fleet, right? Then they formed this goodwill ambassadorship. He held an amnesty summit to bring together the immigrant fleet and Galaxy Federation, but Voyager targeted that event and captured those children, the ambassadors. Right. So it's a big reveal when you finally get there because you have to go into the U.M.N. and fight off a bunch of what do they call them? Macrophage bosses and stuff. And you finally get to where the ambassadors are being kept. And it turns out these are kids. And it's like, what on earth was Donald Marquand doing? This is messed up. And they basically commit suicide.
They do. They read some of the lines. And then it seems as though from their own voluntary self-will that they end their own lives. Yeah.
And I guess that's part of the Pied Piper tie as well.
That
the words, these scriptures from Revelation that he uses to sort of brain hack or brainwash these children he targets is the song,
right? It's the song
of the Pied Piper that leads them along, and then they want to do what he offer themselves as sacrifice. Essentially, is what's going on there. So that's the tie to Pied Piper. Anyway, that's the first scenario.
Yep.
Then they do some. Well, Erich Weber, who the person who really is Voyager, but we don't know that yet. He hacks in, or I keep saying hack, jacks into the scenario and gets killed by a macrophage.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, crap. And they take his body to get like, and then a bunch of the children too. They finally bring them out of the U.M.N. They take him to a hospital where this doctor, Sharon Rozas, works. Yeah. This is how Jan meets her. And she's doing an autopsy because they all die. So she's doing an autopsy on Erich, and he just wakes up in the middle of the autopsy and just walks out of the hospital. Like, what is going on here?
It's like, you can't leave. And what does he say? Like, hey, I'll be fine.
It's like, no, it's okay. Trust me. It's
and he just goes. Now, I had a theory here. Tell me about whether this is on the right track or not. But he uploads his memories to the U.M.N. He's basically got a proxy, almost like Sauron's ring, right? He's poured his soul into a different thing, right? So that when he dies, this thing can like come back and like re-enter him. But the thing is, it's tainted. It's part of the U.M.N. Actually, it's not just his memories. It's his memories along with whatever else the U.M.N. is or wants to be. That then gets kind of reinserted back into him, and then it's as though he's him, but really, it's not really him anymore. Right.
Yeah, and he even offers a similar, though not quite so thorough on purpose, explanation to his team members for how he survived it. Well, at the last minute, I actually put my consciousness out of the U.M.N. avatar body I had that got destroyed by that macrophage, and it just took me a while to like get it back in again, download it back to my body. And they're like, whoa, that's really smart. You're super good at the U.M.N. Right? And they're like, oh, let's go celebrate that you're alive. It's like, all these kids just died, dude. We can't go celebrate this. Like, oh, yeah, you're right.
But you know what's funny is Erich, you kind of do see it coming that it's him.
Yes.
At least in part, because anytime they start talking about anything important about Voyager, and you only would do this to imply suspicion, but they'll give a little ellipsis. Like,
like he's being silent about it, like, ugh.
You don't need to do that. But they do it, and when they do it, it's always him. And anytime they start talking about Voyager, Erich's always like, ... I'm like, that means he's doing nothing.
Yeah.
But when you emphasize it in a text game, you're emphasizing the fact that Erich's being silent. And everyone else is being silent, but Erich's really being silent. And that means that he's suspicious.
I saw this in kind of two ways, because you're right. It does make it a little too obvious that Erich is actually Voyager. However, I think they at least did a decent job of not necessarily making it that he is Voyager, but that he's somehow controlled or that something went wrong in that death, that now Voyager has some influence over him, because you have the scene where like Jan finds him injecting like the freaking endorphin drugs.
The thing,
and he's like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, you mean this dietary supplement?
Yeah, it's it's a common thing. Yeah.
And they find out later that's not a dietary supplement. That is an illegal drug.
Yeah. But you're right. The implication is that he's suspicious. You would not necessarily jump from that to say he is Voyager. That would be quite the leap.
So I think if you know it already, it's obvious. But if you don't, I could see you being like, well, something's wrong with him.
That's more or less what I was intuiting.
Like Voyager's involved somehow.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you would necessarily jump straight to the conclusion, this is Voyager among us. So I'm not sure how to feel about that, because I knew the twist before reading the story.
Oh, did you?
So it seemed a little on the nose to me, but I don't know if that's how it would read if you didn't know that.
He was just suspicious, and no one else was suspicious. He was the only suspect, right? Now, I didn't realize that he would be Voyager. It's true, but he was suspicious.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, they go through several more scenarios. There's a scenario where they go to, what's the name of the organization? They have a bunch of like like artificially created like fetuses or babies or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And all
That's
of them
right.
were killed too.
That's right. Yeah.
And so they're just going from scenario to scenario, and it's like Voyager's one step ahead of them. And then McCollum brings them back in, says, "Hey guys, like take a break.
Yeah.
We're going to assign you to security detail at this Taurus Foundation party thing that they're doing over here instead, and we're going to let someone else handle this investigation for a while." So there's all, and Jan is basically from that already suspicious that somebody higher up doesn't want me
manipulating,
figuring more stuff out than I have.
Yeah.
I've already started hitting too close to the mark,
right?
And somebody up there doesn't want me to figure it out. So he becomes suspicious of the Federation and all of this. But in the course of these investigations, he continues to meet with this Dr. Sharon Rozas, grows closer to her. I thought that was I thought that was a really nice little kind of side story.
I liked it too.
It does give a nice sense of sort of like there's a lot of time that goes on. This investigation is not like something that happens in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
This goes on for a while. He develops a relationship with this woman and her son. I really liked the scene.
He's funny.
Where the son is like, "Hey, like, do you like my mom?
Yeah, isn't
like,
she so beautiful?
I really want you to fall in love with my mom because I want a dad again so bad." So Sharon's former husband, she's a widow, was also a policeman who died, on duty. And so, she's lonely. Son really wants a father figure. And his way of expressing that to Jan, I thought was really endearing.
Yeah, it's funny.
Endearing.
Well, I
cute.
loved it too. That when his mom comes back in, she's like, "Hey, what are you talking about?" And he's like, "No, just men's stuff, Mom. Just stuff for just men's."
Great.
Yeah, it was great.
No
I
girls
loved it.
allowed.
And then that was Jan is just like, "Yeah, this is men's talk." I thought that was.
It was good. It was good. It was good bonding. Really sweet moments.
Yeah.
Again, I think Xenosaga in particular is good at writing those kinds of little character bonding moments. In most Xeno games, they have them. Well, the ones that she worked on, I guess I'm talking about. And I think they really work. So
yeah,
I think as far as summary, that's like mostly what's important to know. When it really starts getting crazy is when they hit on the fact, because Melissa has contacts with this group called the Veritas group.
That's right.
And they are an anti-U.M.N. organization. They think it is bad to meddle with and use this U.M.N. I like this as a concept.
Me too.
Because
We've talked about this.
Freaking galaxy depends on its use. A little Mass Effect-like.
Yeah, very Mass Effect-like.
Yeah, with the technology that was left behind by the Protheans.
Right.
That is on purpose.
It's like you don't understand what your society is based on.
It forces the entire civilization to rely on something they don't really understand how it works or who is the one responsible for creating it and for what purposes.
Yeah.
And so
there's actually a Pied Piper parallel right there.
Totally.
It's
actually,
like,
yes.
We found this foreign technology that gets rid of all of our problems. It solves everything. And we are you willing to pay an adequate price for it? Like, are you like what does it really do like down the road in the future?
Yeah.
Well, we don't know. We don't know. But it's awesome now. It solves our problem now, and we don't care. And it seems free at the moment. And it's like, well, later on, you have the price for the Piper comes due. The price for this foreign technology that you've imported into your society to solve all your problems begins to slowly eat away at your future, right? Go figure. It's like this is just how things happen. That's really good. I like that.
So Veritas is a group that is super against, or at least is very cautious about using it.
Yeah.
And wants to take away the reliance of this civilization on the U.M.N.
I love that at the end of the game, it is Melissa giving the final monologue.
Yes.
And she's talking about this. And in particular about how, the U.M.N. gave us great technology, but actually didn't help our lives the way that you would think. I really find a lot of parallels to the internet and modern social media type stuff. Sure. Modern, connectivity. And like we brought up in the past, like, verdict's not out yet as to whether or not this will prove to be a good thing.
A good or bad thing for humanity.
And I feel like that's one of the points that this game's making is like, the U.M.N. sounds so amazing, but like, connecting everything sounds so amazing, but it also enables tyrants to do some pretty horrible stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, so she goes to Veritas and she learns through them that they have basically figured out that a man named Dmitry Yuriev is essentially the one contracting or using Voyager to do what he's doing. And that's when it's like, okay, now you've really gone too far. We're going to arrest you guys.
Right.
So,
but he's very powerful.
Yeah. McCollum, who is Jan's superior, is like, okay, you've told me all this. Like, give me a second to like see what I can do about it. Don't do anything crazy. But then right then there's basically an officer who comes and is like, yeah, I'm not going to let you do that. And so like they all get arrested or in McCollum's case, basically killed over this. Yeah. But they escape. They're able to escape prison and then they're fugitives for a while. Sharon is kind of helping them out. Veritas group is giving them a place they can hide out while they, continue their investigation. And they eventually find out, it's actually Mikhail who finds out first that Erich is
Eric.
Voyager.
And it's while he's alone with Erich.
Yeah. And so he's trying to call them on a private connection and like, meet me here right away. I have to tell you who Voyager is. But like Erich then arrives with Jan and the group. So he's like, oh crap, he's here. And then he gets brain jacked and then it ends up attacking you and can't reveal it in time.
This is the difficult thing that I had a hard time with. How can Erich be present and with everyone, but also brain jacking people at the same time?
That's part of his
superpower
with the U.M.N.
That's
what makes him so hard to
because I thought he was out behind
down.
The scenes, kind of like that dude from The Matrix, where it's like he's got to not be part of it and he's doing it separately.
No, he can
he can do it at any point.
He doesn't have to be in one of those dive beds necessarily in order to get into the
They
U.M.N.
do talk about this. They have their spatial reality and then they have their the digital reality, and that there's a way that they kind of mesh sometimes that like the real reality can be affected by the digital reality.
Yeah, they talk about the domain of the domain of higher numbers or real numbers or something like that.
Yeah.
This is a term they used in Xenosaga 1 as well. Yeah. That's basically where the gnosis are.
Right.
And like
there's the imaginary numbers and then real numbers.
And the real number domain or whatever they call it. So that all plays a part of this. Yeah. It's all complicated, and I don't think it's necessary to perfectly understand that to get the point of Pied Piper, which is kind of more along the lines that we're talking about. We're casting suspicion on the U.M.N. We're casting suspicion on Dmitry Yuriev and certain people within the Galactic Federation, and there are other groups even who are all they're all fighting for control of the Zohar, and they're all trying to get back to Lost Jerusalem. That's kind of like really what they're all about. They want to go back to Lost Jerusalem. Yeah. And there's several groups, and they show this, and this is a very, again, xenotypical sort of thing.
Xenotypical.
Yeah.
That's a great word. Xenotypical. That's like outside typical. That's wonderful.
A xenotypical thing. You have several groups of villains, all who want the same thing, that sort of cooperate for the moment to get it, but but
they're hiding the
all
daggers.
Really want control of it themselves.
Right.
So you've got like the leader of Ormus, I forget his name. It was Julius who gets killed, and then there's another guy who steps in at the very end, who's sort of the one who's what do you call it?
They call him the patriarch or something.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I can't remember.
And he's sort of leading the big thing at the end where everyone gets killed. He's like, what is the term I'm thinking of? Not conduct the meeting, but like overseeing it, like running it, like
presiding something,
over that.
Yeah.
Is anyway, they got him, and he thinks like only us, the pure lost tribes of Israel, should have control of the Zohar. Right. And I'm going to allow Dmitry Yuriev to do what he's doing for now, kind of thing, right? They're all plotting in this way, and it makes you get this rich tapestry of villainy behind the scenes. You got like Wilhelm over here doing his thing. You got Voyager and Dmitry over here doing their thing. You got like the Ormus dudes, the religious dudes over here doing their thing, and they're all kind of vying for the same thing. They want control of the Zohar.
Yeah.
They've all more or less understand that Udu is at the core of the U.M.N., but they're trying to like use that even though they're playing with powers they probably don't have control over.
Yeah.
It's all great stuff. I really love the way they write villains in these Xeno games.
This is great actually, because it's not necessarily Voyager that's the Piper. Udo is the Piper.
I wanted
There's
to
like
have...
a deeper meta discussion here.
I wanted to have a larger discussion on Udu today, but
Okay.
I don't think it's
Maybe we should
necessarily the
wait.
time to do it.
We should wait.
Because, and listen, guys, at this point, we're so far into this that we can't just... We're doing our best not to spoil Xenosaga 2 and 3 yet.
Right.
But we've already talked about Xenogears. We've already talked about Xenosaga 1. So if you have not played those and you're somehow watching this, I have no idea how you ended up here.
Please go.
You've got to freaking go play those.
Yeah.
But I'm going to talk a little Xenogears here.
Okay.
So, be forewarned, there may be some Xenogears spoilers in what I'm about to say. Obviously, the wave existence, it would be the equivalent here of what Udu is. But in Xenosaga, Udu seems a little more...
selfish?
Malicious than the wave existence does.
Yeah.
Now, the Deus system, which the wave existence was trapped inside of, was
Right.
this malicious demiurge.
Yeah.
So, but Udu seems to me at this point of my exploration of Xenosaga to be closer to what you would say the wave existence is, but it seems a little bit more like, it keeps showing these like apocalyptic end time sort of messages
Right.
to those who come in contact with it. And here's my take on it at this moment in time. My take on it is the people who are seeing the visions just aren't really understanding it. I don't think Udu is evil. I don't think Udu is showing something like some calamity that it intends for some evil or malicious purpose. I don't think that's what's actually showing what's happening. It's the fact that these people with their limited minds are coming in contact with this higher dimensional being and seeing this end and going, oh my gosh, that's horrible. They're interpreting it as if it is this horrible, evil thing. And then therefore they have to try to avoid what they're seeing by whatever cost or whatever means they can, which is what leads Voyager to do what he does, which is what leads Dmitry Yuriev to do what he does, Wilhelm to be doing what he's doing. And so I don't think Udu is evil. I just think these people see what Udu shows them, interpret it as bad, and then think of it that way. That's my take on Udu so far.
Very interesting.
No idea if that's going to be correct.
I don't either. I know nothing about Xenosaga 3. So.
As Aiden is saying here, all these people led by fear. They fear what Udu shows them.
Yeah.
But I don't think what Udu is showing them is evil or bad. It's just a thing. All good things come to an end. That's not a bad thing. That's just nature. And we interpret it as sad. And we interpret it as, oh, that sucks. Yeah. I don't want this thing I love to come to an end. But it's just the way of the world. It's the way of the nature. Right?
It is. But then you can imagine that if this is to be our end anyways, what's immoral or wrong about just ending someone's life a little sooner than it otherwise anyways would have.
That's what people use to justify what they do.
The horrible behavior.
Or to extend my life or whatever, or I have plans to forego this or for the betterment of humanity, forestall or elude this thing. And so the sacrifices that must be made in pursuit of that are justified.
Yeah, we talked about that with Tactics Ogre. Yeah.
So anyway, I think that's mostly what's going on with these villains. But yeah, the gut-wrenching part, I think the part that really hit me emotionally the most in this game was the scene where, because Sharon is part of this religious organization. This, these people of the Zohar, this Ormus group, right? She worships there. She sees a priest a couple different times. And she goes to this pilgrimage council where a bunch of the people of the Zohar are brought in for this sacrifice Voyager is planning as a part of his contract with Udu.
Right.
Jan has to watch as his newly wed wife and his stepson are killed in front of him. He has to watch them die.
Yeah.
Now, that's obviously awful, but that's not even the part that hit me as the most emotional part. It was the fact that he was watching them accept this. I will be a part of this sacrifice. They're sort of brain jacked or washed
because
brains.
it seemed like Shannon and Joaquin couldn't actually hear him. He was like, "Don't do it. This is ridiculous. It's not true." But it seemed like they had just lost their agency.
Yeah,
they were just like doing whatever he told them.
But it's almost in the fact that they knew he wasn't there and couldn't hear, that they were saying things like, we get to be, or joking, I get to be with Dad again, right?
All that
and
stuff.
we
Yes,
don't
whatever
have
you
to
want.
mourn anyone anymore.
Yeah, everyone can be happy.
Dude, that
Yeah,
would
yeah.
suck to hear for someone like Jan, who had stepped in
Sure.
and tried to be a part of these
Yeah.
people's lives, and now you're really
And they're
important
willing
to
to just
me.
die.
You're my wife
Yeah.
and my new son, and even the cool scene that was in Xenosaga 1 from Ziggy's perspective, where he gets the little cyborg dog for Yokin. Remember that? And he's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, it's Nexus 9 or that's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
that's the freaking model number. We're going to call him Nex."
Yeah.
That scene was in Xenosaga 1.
Right.
And this scene plays out again here. So he's like becoming integrated with the family. He's forming these bonds. He was such a cold person and standoffish, and his own father was a cop and had like died in the line of duty. And he
Jan's, right?
Yeah, he had this like sort of ideal about like
You got to be cold and calculating, and
your duty is more
Yeah.
important than anything.
and when
he
people
was
die,
taking-
don't think
Yeah.
about it. Just do your mission. Yeah.
taking a step back from that and making real human connections. And then these people are just happy to leave you to go back to be with their real husband or father. That would really, really be hard
Right.
to hear, I feel like. Right when you start to sort of allow yourself to have that kind of a connection with a person, and then they so willingly just like throw it away to be the person who they really want to be with.
Was this a show done by Voyager on purpose to break him?
I think so.
Yeah.
And that comes down to what I think
That's
is
what I think.
probably to me the most interesting part of his dialogue with Voyager at the end. So you fight Voyager a couple times and you essentially defeat him, but then Wilhelm shows up. Wilhelm is the leader of well, there's Kaiser Gagnon of the
I thought it was
Kukai
Kaiser.
Foundation.
Hold on. Kaiser Wilhelm was a real dude from World War I. It's not.
Yes.
Yeah. I got
The
you.
Kaiser from Xenosaga
Yes.
1 is Gagnon of the Kukai
Yes,
Foundation.
that's right.
Wilhelm is at the head of the Vector Industries, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
And that's the one with the symbol that looks like the Cancer astrological symbol, right?
Yep.
So Vector Industries, which is like the most powerful
they made
corporate
Cosmos,
organization.
and they have the
Yes.
archetype, right?
Yes.
So yeah.
in the entire galaxy.
Yeah.
Anyway, Wilhelm is very powerful. Not even just, just in terms of his resources.
Yeah.
He's extremely wealthy. He's at the head of massive organizations and has like tons and tons and tons of resources at his hands.
Yeah.
So when Voyager is stopped by Jan and the team, Wilhelm shows up and offers him a new contract because he feels like he was betrayed by Udu.
Yeah.
Udu did not fulfill the contract
He didn't do it.
that
And
was
even-
supposed to happen through the sacrifice.
It's crazy how fast Vector kind of drops what he was doing, right? Like, hey, it didn't work. You're not it. You didn't do it. Didn't work. And he even quotes a Bible verse later, and he goes, "Not that it matters. This whole thing was a waste, right?
Yes.
I just wanted to say the verse.
Voyager,
I just wanted to say the verse again. Just, anyways. But it's like he had completely lost everything that he was trying to do, right?
Yeah.
But Wilhelm comes in to offer him a new thing, which is, hey, join me with my thing. You're pretty powerful. I can just kill you now. So like, join me, and then like at least you'll get to live longer. You know? And he's like, all right, because he's all after eternal life. So he's like, all right, I'll join you.
And offers him, okay, like you didn't get what you wanted from Dmitry Yuriev in your
from
partnership
Yuriev.
with them, and you didn't get it from your contract with Udu.
With Udu.
What if I promise you that I can do it for real?
Fool me twice,
it's-
shame on me. Fool me a third. You know what's funny though? This is
Exactly
very
what I
similar
thought.
to the exact thing that Voyager then offers to Jan. He says, okay, Jan, you join with me and, this will be great, right? But Jan won't do it, of course.
No.
But Erich was so willing to join with Wilhelm.
Right.
It's like he's looking for other people to latch himself onto, while all the time, just like you were saying with all the enemies, kind of they have their own selfish like reasons for their trying to grasp at power. But he's willing to play second fiddle to a lot of different people, and because of that, he keeps getting thrown off. But he can't. He's not able to do it himself. He can't do it himself. He's not it, right?
Yeah.
But people are willing to take advantage of him because he's so willing to just let them use him, right?
Yeah.
And so this is the third. I don't know how it turns out with Wilhelm, but my guess is, he's not gonna get the better end of the stick with this one either, just like he didn't the last two times.
Yeah, this is a kind of a complex thing that I wanted to dive into here at the ending. I think in order to really set the context for this conversation, the title of Xenosaga 1, its subtitle, which was a translation.
Der Wille zur Macht. Yeah.
Yes.
The Will to Power.
The Will to Power, which is a Nietzschean, a title of one of a book that,
one of his
he
books.
wrote.
Possibly his most famous book.
The Will to Power
Mm-hmm.
is something that really comes into play here, I think, at the end of Pied Piper. Because there's a character, it's a Realian character, one of the, I would say, early Realians because Realians
they're relatively
new technology. If you want to know more about Realians, go watch our Xenosaga 1 series. But he's a Realian, and in the midst of this conversation where Wilhelm shows up and offers this to Voyager and all this, they kind of turn, I think Voyager turns now that he's been given his new purpose or whatever, to Lactus and says something about you have Kanan inside of you. Right?
Yeah, that was interesting. That seemed kind of random.
Yes.
But it's
almost like
relevant to Xenosaga
a sleeper agent of some kind. You're this Realian sleeper agent, and we have this special word Kanan that we can use to to set you back on the thing you're really supposed to be doing.
Now, I had a question about this the whole time. Did that work? Because the whole time Lactus is like, no, I'm not. This is ridiculous. I don't know what you're talking about. Hey, dude, I'm still with you, Jan. Like, we're still cool. But Realians don't have a choice with that kind of stuff. So it's like, was that part of his protocol? I'm fuzzy on that. Maybe I should be, because he is a very important character in Xenosaga 2.
Yes.
And maybe throughout the course of that game, I'll figure
you
the answer to my question.
You will know this character as Kanan in Xenosaga 2. He's literally like the first character really in the game, in the first scenario. That you'll see him right away.
Right.
But that Lactus it was his name as he was a part of this team that worked with Jan on this investigation.
Yeah.
He's known as Kanan in Xenosaga 2. Anyway, Kanan's purpose, according to what Voyager says, is to try to locate humans with something called the Factor.
The Factor, yeah.
And I was sitting there racking my brain trying to figure out, like, what are you talking about? The Factor. What is that? And the only
classic
clue,
Takahashi.
the only clue that I think led me into what my conclusion as to what that is was that Voyager said this is something both you, Jan, and me have. We both have this factor. And Kanan's job is to find people like us.
Now, my suggestion is that Voyager is not. He's not that.
I think that in a way he is.
Okay, it's possible. But
you're talking about he's excluded from this because he's willing to be used by all of these people in these contracts. I think that's a valid,
whereas Erich was not.
Counterpoint.
Jan was not.
Right. It's a valid sort of counterpoint. However, he was also determined enough to hack the freaking core of the U.M.N. and contact Udu.
Yeah, that's a pretty big deal.
That takes some exceptional determination and will
I think
to accomplish.
It depends, because I would say this, okay, how about this? He has the will to knowledge, or the will to something like that. Not necessarily
power.
Maybe not necessarily power, but the will to, well, maybe, yes, because knowledge, in a way, knowledge is power. But he has a different angle. He's approaching it in a different way through knowledge instead of just the raw power. He's like, I want to know everything.
There's also
and through that gain all power.
Yeah, there's also the fact that he didn't actually do what Dmitry Yuriev wanted him to do. Remember, like, as this is all going down, they cut back to Yuriev real quick, and he's like, that fool, like, what is he doing? He's not supposed to be.
Well, he contacted
He
Udu.
goes outside of the bounds a little bit of what Yuriev had expected or wanted him to do. So there's an element to this where, sure, he offered a partnership, maybe even looking like a subordinate somehow to Yuriev and all this, but then ended up when the cards were down, he did what he wanted to do
that's a good
in
point.
his contact with Udu to get what he wanted.
Because he found something higher to serve, basically.
So I could see how, with all of that context, the writer here, Sorya Saga, is including him as a person who has the will to power, or this factor that is necessary, that Wilhelm recognizes and is the reason he even recruits him in the first place.
Fair enough.
You are a person with the factor. I
Yeah.
wanted you to come with me now. So the choice that Voyager gives to Jan at the end of the game is, you're a person with this factor, this will, this strong will to power like I have.
Right.
I give you a choice to come with me now with Wilhelm and what we're going to do, or I'll kill you here.
Right, because you can't let someone with the factor live if they aren't controlled by you.
They
will eventually
on your side.
Exactly.
They'll become a worthy adversary at some point, as has proven to be the case in this final battle.
Yeah.
So Jan's response to this is, I refuse. It's a little bit Bioshocky in the sense that, like, nope.
I got the exact same decision. A slave a man chooses, a slave obeys.
Exactly.
And it was like, I will end my own life.
I will not let you kill me, and I will not join you. I will kill myself.
Whereas I choose option 3, which has the same effect as option 2, but at least he gets to know that it was his own choice, instead of being made for him.
So this is giving the idea that Jan's will is very strong. His human will, his factor is also very strong. But he ends up shooting himself. I would think in part just the despair of this freaking horrific event and watching your wife and child willingly die to leave you and go be with the real dad is just devastating enough to be like, well, screw all of you. No.
Yes.
Right. And so this is where the Life Recycling Act comes into play a little bit here. We talked about this in the Xenosaga 1 podcast series.
He becomes Ziggurat 8.
Yeah, this is how he became the character we know from that game as Ziggy or Ziggurat 8, the cyborg, who is almost entirely, except for like portions of his brain now, totally reconstructed as a robot.
He wanted all his memories gone.
Yeah, he wants to remember none of this. He wants to totally erase the Jan Sauer portion of his identity and forget it all if possible. But he had signed a contract like many people of this time did, which was, after I die, you can use my body in this Life Recycling Act to bring it back.
Planescape Torment.
Yes.
Yeah, very interesting.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And so anyway, this is all the origin story of Ziggy from Xenosaga. And this was a story that was supposed to take place in Xenosaga 2 originally. Like they were going to explore this backstory of Ziggy there, but it was cut for a number of reasons, time constraints, whatnot, and sort of separated into this other side project, which was Soria Saga's last contribution to the Xeno series.
Yep.
A little bit similar, say, to how Cherenkov's background was explored in Xenosaga 1. Yeah. Cherenkov and how he had, like...
Life Recycling Act with him, too, right?
Yeah, and how he had been reconditioned over and over and over and over and over again up to, like, level 8 to, like, not get into those violent instincts, and he kept freaking murdering people anyway.
It just happens. This does also harken a little bit back to the Planes... something else we talked about in Planescape Torment, which is the possibility of a future world where people aren't punished for their actions; they're just conditioned, and then here you go, you can come back. And for some reason, the reconditioning doesn't always work.
No,
and so you end up reintroducing a serial killer back into society over and over and over and over. But you got rid of like prisons and stuff, so you don't really have a way to deal with them.
Yeah,
it's kind of fun.
Yeah. So overall, I really liked it. I thought it was pretty cool.
Too. Melissa at the end though, she gives
the epilogue,
because there's that one part at the very end. I thought this was absolutely fascinating. She starts saying, "Hey, I used to be just like a cop, and now I'm leading 1 million people in this resistance
against
the U.M.N."
Is the name of the or Scientia or whatever it is, which the organization she makes, and it's sort of like I don't know if it's a branch or just a separate organization or an evolution of Veritas. But it's the same purpose.
Yeah.
They are against the use of the U.M.N. or the reliance on the U.M.N.
She explains why. So Veritas, Latin root, means truth, whereas Scientia, Latin root, means knowledge.
Yeah.
It's just knowledge. That's where the word science comes from. It just means knowledge.
And the word verdade in Portuguese, or verdade in Spanish comes from. Yeah.
So basically, and she says the most interesting thing here too, because she says that quote from the Bible also, which is the truth will set you free. That's a quote from Jesus in the Gospel of John. And it's interesting that for a game that's quoting the Bible in this strange way all the way throughout, especially Revelation, then we get Melissa at the end, and then she says, the truth will set you free, but how do you know the truth is the question. And I feel like that's maybe the difference, maybe the why Veritas stopped being Veritas and became more Scientia is because like she doesn't feel like she has a reasonable enough grasp on the truth or a way of knowing the truth well enough. It's like, well, it's just knowledge, something like that. Yeah. I don't know. I could be reading into it too much there, but she does say in the monologue that the truth will set you free, and I long to be true, but I long to be free, but I don't know what the truth is.
Yes.
And that, I don't know. I thought that was a very interesting way to kind of leave this story, to end it. Right?
Yes. On
a quote from Jesus. From the Bible, but also kind of like questioning how to get there. And that's really the whole endeavor of everything is right. Like, you know, I want the truth. Tom Cruise in whatever that movie was, I want the truth. And it's like, you can't handle the truth. And it's true. Humans can't handle the truth.
That is exactly.
It's the truest statement ever.
This is exactly why I have come to my conclusion about Udu that I have.
Okay.
I think it's that it's not that the truth of Udu is a bad thing. It's that humans can't handle Udu's truth.
That is,
and they interpret Udu as this malicious, higher dimensional being or whatever.
But what
that
it really
is sort of like prophesying this doom of the end of the human race. But it's just the truth. It's just what it is. It's just this is the truth, and the people who come in contact with this truth, for the most part, can't handle it.
They can't handle the truth. That's a very interesting.
That's what I believe is sort of the core thing to take away from Pied Piper a little bit. And I think that's in part why I like the epilogue, that part of the epilogue.
Well, I liked it too.
That ties that back into there. Voyager came in contact with Udu and could not handle it. He was obsessed with the truth. He was obsessed with breaking the barrier of the human limitations of understanding all of this just vast knowledge that's available through the U.M.N. This information. He became a net-holic. He was obsessed with learning everything. But his limited human brain was not capable of it. And when he came to this ultimate point of truth, he could not handle it. He could not handle what he saw.
Right.
And the same is true of Dmitry Yuriev, who was actually, I think they mention it right here, the first Voyager, who also had come in contact with Udu. And we'll learn a lot more about him in Xenosaga 2 and forward, and his attempts to avoid what Udu showed him. I think Wilhelm is also a character we'll learn who is similarly trying to subvert this sort of like truth that was shown by Udu.
Right.
And our characters in Xenosaga 1 came in contact during the Encephalon dive sequence with Udu. And what was shown to them was kind of hard to grasp.
Right.
And not sure that they could really handle what they were seeing.
Right.
But it's all being interpreted as this fear of what this force or power of Udu is.
Because it means humans aren't in control. And all humans want is to control everything.
Yes.
That is all humans want. That's a very deep kind of just part of like who we are, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's our worst fault and sometimes a kind of good quality.
Yeah.
I'll put it that way. But I want to talk about Udu for just a moment, because what does it mean that Udo then broke its contract with Voyager? And what does it mean that Udo wanted sacrifices of children?
Do you know what?
But this might be too much.
Why don't I pull up the script from the very end of the game? Because they kind of talk about this. But again, I'm suspicious of any human interpretation of what Udu's actual intentions are.
Okay.
Anytime they say Udu just wanted this, I go, that's what you think Udu wants, but you don't actually understand Udu. Huh. That's basically the way I approach anytime a human being in Xenosaga talks about Udu or what Udu wants.
Okay.
You don't really know. This is just what you think it is. But I'll pull it up real quick because I think it's at least important to touch on that. So Wilhelm is talking with Voyager. Because Voyager says, "What's wrong? Lord, answer me. Udu, Udu. Like, why didn't you fulfill my contract? Why?" That's when Wilhelm steps in. "It's pointless, you know. He won't respond no matter how much you yell. Who are you?" And then Wilhelm sort of appears behind him. he's already fulfilled his goal, you see. So Wilhelm is speaking. Anytime someone, again, is speaking on behalf of Udu's intentions, I'm like, I don't think you know what you think you know. But he's already fulfilled his goal. Fulfilled his goal? I haven't fulfilled anything yet, says Voyager. Wilhelm, he learned what he wanted to know as far as existence is concerned. The concept of eternity is not necessarily indispensable.
For existence, something like that. That existence can exist without eternity being possible.
Yes.
Something that's more or less what he's saying.
That is what Wilhelm is saying.
And that's
Udu
what makes Voyager
wanted
break.
to know.
Udu wanted to know if eternity is necessary to existence.
And that's why as soon as Udu got its answer, it no longer needed Voyager and broke its contract.
Okay.
According to Wilhelm, who I do not trust.
I don't trust Wilhelm either.
That is the reason.
I don't see how Udo got an answer to that based on what we saw in Pied Piper. But, we can let that be.
Yeah. And I don't think Wilhelm is either one, being truthful, or two, even understands what Udu wants. Right. So that would be the answer to that question according to Wilhelm.
Okay.
Now, it goes on to say, eternity isn't necessary, and then Wilhelm says, he learned this through your existence. He just wanted a confirmation. In other words, your contract was doomed from the beginning. Voyager says, who are you? Wilhelm says, I'm your new partner, and if you let me, I can make you very happy. I don't need a partner. With my own mind, I can voyage forever on the sea of the U.M.N. Wilhelm says, that's quite a bluff, isn't it? I don't think those are the words of a man who was betrayed by Yuriev and had his contract revoked by Udu before his very eyes. Why are you? And then Wilhelm, I offer you the things that they couldn't. Perhaps you'll consider joining me. So this is where he says that. He would. What do you have to offer me? I've been watching you for a long time, the dazzling radiance of your consciousness. Yes, we'd make a good team, wouldn't we? Don't you realize you won't have to worry about your inferiority complex anymore? That is what I'm giving to you, a new world you haven't even imagined. So, again, I don't think it's that Voyager, Erich, is willing to be submissive to someone and that diminishes his will to power. It's that he's offered something that as a human being, he just always wanted, which is to not feel inferior because of his freaking brain disorder. Right? So I accept being partners with you if you can provide that for me. That existence is even more powerful than Udu. That depends on you. If you cooperate with me, I'll help you out too. So what do you think? Well, this line gives more credence to your reading of Voyager, actually. I have no choice, do I?
I have no choice, yeah.
I'm glad we have your cooperation.
That was great. I loved that line.
So that does kind of poke holes a little bit in his will being strong. But
it's like he doesn't really have agency here.
It is also important to note that Voyager's white cloak, he's wearing a white cloak the whole time, it turns black.
It turns black.
That is important to notice.
Yeah.
This character will come up again in the upcoming games, and he will be wearing black.
He will be wearing black, not white.
Okay, so want me to bring Sawyer here too? He asks him. Really? Well, I'll leave it to you. So it's kind of like an Emperor Darth Vader thing. Can you bring young Luke Skywalker into the fold? If you can, I leave it to you.
Yep.
And then so Voyager goes back. And there was something really interesting here. This is where they talk about Canaan. Lactus is Canaan. We already went over that. Yeah. Even as you deny it, your instincts. No, you don't have instincts. Your basic root systems, he's talking to Lactus, are telling you otherwise, aren't they? Sawyer is dispensable now. Okay. Then he reads the entire Revelation, chapter 16, 17 through 21, and says, my contract with God ended in failure. Now those words are nothing more than a requiem to send your souls off to their prison. So what are you going to do?
It's crazy. He doesn't sound like someone whose belief in God just got shattered, or whose trust and whose faith just got destroyed. He's almost just like, do away with it. We'll see what the next thing is. It makes me wonder, like the concept of making a contract with God and then finding out that he totally abandoned you doesn't affect him that much. One of the things that I didn't bring up that I wanted to bring up earlier, is that this is a phone game. There's some rough patches. It's not the biggest game. There, it's very simple. There's not a ton of text. Xenosaga is trying to convey this whole story with very minimal amounts of text. Keep the game very short. Because of that, it's a very simple. Well, it's not. The plot is generally simple, but a lot of the details in it are very complex. But for the most part, she's keeping things from getting too overly convoluted, in my opinion. One of the effects that this has is sometimes characters' motivations seem a little bit too hasty. They seem to kind of move from one thing to the next too quickly. Kind of like you mentioned about, all these kids died, but hey, let's go celebrate because you're alive or whatever. Right. So, okay, great. But it's like, oh, did you get over that? Well, they could have inserted a scene where they were sad before that, but it would have taken longer. With this one here, the fact that his whole world just got shattered and his contract with the existence of the entire foundation of their world just completely abandoned him. But this dude told him that he's got better stuff for him, and he's like just going along with it. Felt a little bit too quick for him. He was a little too hasty to kind of just, okay, I'm reading you the end of my Bible, which I believed in until last 2 seconds ago, but I don't even care that it's meaningless now. I'm just saying the words anyways, so that, okay, now let's fight, and I'm fine. I'm totally fine. I'm unaffected.
I think
felt
you're
a little too
right.
quick for me.
I think there's definitely some maybe limitations as far as what platform this was written for that could have affected
I think the platform
how smooth some of these transitions from one state to another in character motivations happens. That being said, I am also curious about the translation itself, the English translation.
Yeah, because we watched on YouTube.
Yeah. This is going to go right back into our
Unicorn Overlord
stuff. I think that the kind of person, I have no idea who it is that did this English translation of Xenosaga Pied Piper.
Which, by the way,
the Xenosaga Wiki.
We are very thankful for.
Thank you for doing that.
It's great that we have that.
You allowed us to be able to consume this awesome story and this piece, this important piece, I would say, to the Xenosaga lore. And we really appreciate the work that goes into this. You certainly were not paid to do it. You just did it out of your love of the game, and that's awesome. So nothing I'm about to say is a criticism of this person at all. I don't know you. I'm just grateful that you did it.
Yeah,
and
you made this accessible for a lot of people.
There is something to be said about an art to translation and localization that goes beyond just being very, very familiar with both languages and knowing how to get the words as close as possible from this one to this one.
Yeah.
There's something to be said about that. There's something to be said about understanding the cultures behind the languages and the ways in which they use these words and in the cultural context, what that would mean.
Yeah.
And if in this culture, these words connotate this meaning, in this one, it's a little different. Those words don't quite mean the same thing in this culture. So what we want to translate is not necessarily just the words. We want to translate the meaning behind those words in their cultural context. Sometimes that's not even possible because the cultural equivalent doesn't exist.
Yes, exactly.
And in which case, the hard thing you have to do is try to find the closest equivalent to what they would have in their culture. And sometimes that means really radically changing what it says just to try to fit the closest cultural context you can find. And whether you should or shouldn't do that is always a deliberation. It's always a tough decision to make. So I imagine, wild speculation on my part, that the fan who translated this, who obviously knows both languages very well, was, as everyone who cares about these Japanese games would do, trying to be as faithful as possible to her, Xenosaga words.
Right.
I want to give you her words. I'm not trying to interfere here at all.
There's something admirable about that.
Yes.
There is. But you do lose things in the localization.
What I'm saying is it is possible that there are some things lost when trying to be so faithful to a translation.
Sure.
Sometimes important cultural context is lost in that kind of translation that makes you miss something. Even in trying to be so faithful, you could end up not getting something across to your other culture and audience and language that was intended in this one.
Right.
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
So what I'm curious about in this translation is, are some of those things lost in such a way to where the writing in English maybe appears a little clumsy or something like that? Whereas if you were a native Japanese reader reading the Japanese, it wouldn't have come across like that. I'm not saying what you're bringing up is an example of that. I'm saying the entire time I was reading this, that was in my head.
Okay.
I would come across something where I'd say, that reads a little clumsy to me. And I would remember Sorya Saga didn't write these English words.
Right.
Somebody translated them and was probably trying their very best to be direct and faithful to her words. And had she both, if she was somehow a superhero and had been born in both an English-speaking country and Japanese-speaking country and knew both, would she have translated it that way to get her own point across in the same way? That's impossible to know. All I'm saying is that this is where it is sometimes important for a translator to be a good writer. So a translator who really, really understands the cultures of both, which is, again, a tall order. You have to be linguistically talented. You have to, I don't know what you'd call it, culturally knowledgeable.
Right.
You have to have lived in both cultures a long time and understood them very well and studied them a long time. Also be a linguist. Also be a good writer. To convey with the most beautiful language you can in both languages that concept. There's a real art to this.
Also be familiar with Carl Jung and Gnosticism and all the other games. And like, this is a tall order. This really is a tall order.
It is.
We are by no means being trying to be overly critical here.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not critical. Just pointing out the difficulty of translating.
Yeah, and then questioning whether or not we got everything.
You can't
I'd assume we got most of it.
You can't just be linguistically skilled to do a good translation of a Xeno game.
Yeah.
You have to be
even the translators. What was his name? Who translated the first Xeno
Richard
game?
Honeywood.
Richard Honeywood was just like, I need a thesaurus to translate this thing. Like, this is unbelievable. A thesaurus. Why did I say thesaurus? I need an encyclopedia.
There you go.
I need an entire encyclopedia in order to translate this game. Like, this is ridiculous.
Okay, so let's go through all the steps. You can't just be linguistically skilled. You must also be culturally knowledgeable.
Yeah.
And I would say sensitive. Culturally knowledgeable and sensitive. Then you have to be a good writer, and then you have to be knowledgeable of all of the
everything,
psychoanalytic, philosophical, religious references that this story employs.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a person on Earth outside of Takahashi him. Well, actually, not even them, because they're not linguistically skilled as far as knowing English.
Right.
So there may be nobody on the planet who exists who could actually do this job well.
Because
I just don't think anybody has those particular passions in each of those specific fields and has put the work in necessary to be good enough in each and every one of those four things in order to give us the perfect, proper translation of a Xeno game. So
at some point, you just have to say that's not going to happen.
You just have to accept there's going to be some clumsiness in the English versions of the game because of any one of those four factors.
Because the games are dope, and so it's okay.
It is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. Even in the Japanese, sometimes it's like, I don't know.
All right. Well,
let's go.
I want to, as we lead off, I'm actually, did somebody bring something up?
Somebody brought up one more thing, and it might be what you're talking about, but there was one more thing that was along the lines of, how does this game change the way that you view Ziggy in the Xenosaga games now? How did this experience, knowing his history, everything that led up to the current point, I mean, the way that I kind of see it is I have a lot of, I already did. I could tell there was some deep traumatic past with Ziggy from Xenosaga 1. And the way that he kind of, his relationship with Momo is just hilarious, at least in part because it's not only like he tolerates her coming along. He gets joy out of his companionship with her in as robotic a way as he's capable of showing it. But he does appreciate the company of the people around him. And there's some part of his past that still does live within him, despite them trying to get rid of it. Oh, he's a different person now. He's got all these different parts. But there's like with the ship of Theseus, there's the identity, there's still something there to him that is the original thing and that does contain that authentic self that he always used to be. As much as he's trying to purge himself of that, it's still there, and you can see it shining through in his personality or in the way that he acts sometimes throughout the games. And seeing it in this particular way, knowing that this is exactly what he went through and how things came to be. This is somebody who had such a will, like you were saying, such a will to not be controlled that he ended up taking his own life. But that because he took his own life and because of the way that everything happened, he now is nothing but a slave to other people's wills. There's something horribly tragic about that. That's the most important part of him that got lost. And that as much as he is trying to regain some semblance of, that type of autonomy, he is made to be a slave now, and all of that was taken away from him. That thing that he was a factor, he was the Voyager was like, you're one of the most important things around.
Yeah.
And that was what was taken away from him, as well as his humanity and his relationships and his love, and all of that stuff was taken away from him. Yet, even though it is reduced to a mere seed within him throughout the Xenosaga games, it's still a seed. And from the little amount of whatever he used to be that is still remaining today, it can grow, and he can he can reclaim that. I think he can reclaim a lot of his lost humanity and his lost autonomy and things that he used to have. And even though there's only a little bit left, it can grow. I don't know. This is a common theme in a lot of stories, but you can reduce things down as much as you want, but you can never completely get rid of them. And somehow they will eventually come back.
His will to power
as small as it is,
specifically, yes, what I'm thinking of.
It's going to grow into a big tree because it's a seed right now, and you couldn't get rid of the seed, and the seed will grow, and it will flourish because he is good soil. There's enough soil left to where he can make it work still.
Yeah.
And I don't know what his full character arc has in store. I've only seen him. I'm maybe a little less than halfway through Xenosaga 2. But he's probably my favorite character at the moment.
Yeah.
And especially with him and Momo. That's a great duo.
I think that's beautifully put, and there's not really much I could even add to that other than just to reiterate how much I was emotionally affected by the fact that he was the type of person that kept people at arm's length.
Yeah, and he
finally allowed a relationship to develop, and those people who he loved had started a real family with, were so willing in their own hearts to go back to the real person they liked.
Yeah.
How crushing a moment that would be. That was almost the most devastating part of the whole story.
And that he can never be that. It's just this reminder that, I never was the real dad, husband, whatever.
But I think you're right. I think what you're touching on is that as far as they went to remove his humanity, the seed of his will to power is in itself strong enough that he still has memories like the one in Xenosaga 1 where 100 years later he's gone out of his way to try to erase this identity of Jan Sauer from his past. And he's still getting memories of Joaquin
deep within him.
That seed of will is still there. And I think that's going to be an important factor coming up in the next two games. Now, I just want to read the epilogue in full because there were some things I was looking at here and I was like, oh, you know what? I want to kind of touch on that before we.
The epilogue is, I think,
it's well written.
It's the best part of the game, in my opinion. I mean, the story was a fun experience, but this epilogue really ties things together very well. Yeah. I liked it.
So this is coming from Melissa. And this is in TC 4667. I can still remember the events of that year as though it were yesterday. Voyager disappeared from the network that night. the Federation police announced that the serial killer was Special Investigator Erich Weber. As the only witness, I had to testify day and night until I was sent into rehabilitation on grounds of extreme mental distress a week later. Here's the thing, no one believed my story. Lactus, who is Kanan in Xenosaga 2, was recalled to Vector because of a defect in his central nervous system. Even now, I don't know the real reason for the recall.
See, this is what makes me think that he didn't respond. They tried to do the sleeper cell. They tried to say the word. And I think it didn't work.
Yeah.
And that's why they're like, uh-oh, he was supposed to awaken and do a thing, and he didn't do it. He's broken. We have to fix him now.
I think you're on the right track with that. But the last time I saw his face, he didn't seem to me like a Realian with an abnormality in his brain. As for the captain, the fact that I couldn't stop the suicide of Jan Sauer haunts me even now. However, I never thought for a moment that his reasons for what he did were wrong. Maybe instead of wanting him to survive, I really just hoped that he would defy Erich. So she had wanted him to try to fight a little harder against Erich, right? The captain's body was quickly recovered after he was registered at the body bank. The biomedical company Ziggurat Industries came and took him for recycling. News of the Zohar's activation caused the entire star system to become interested in owning it.
Right.
Because of that, the Federation's Salvators took it forcefully from the Holy Land of Abraxas. Before long, riots had broken out until on Yuriev's council, the Federation imposed a military sanction on the immigrant fleet. Patriarch Sergius, that's the guy I was thinking of earlier, the 14th went on the network to publicly blame the Federation. The careful relationship that Patriarch Julius had forged between the Galaxy Federation and the immigrant fleet amounted to nothing. As for Yuriev, he appears to have left the political stage to found an institute to research Udu. Also, planet Abraxas was renamed to Mictum and put under strict surveillance by the Federation. I've come to think that the awesome technologies of the U.M.N. are nothing more than useless dead weight.
That's it. That's the line.
Yeah.
Now just substitute internet or modern technology into that exact sentence, and you come up with something similar. Not exactly the same thing, but you think of the life that they live now. Think of all the like intergalactic travel and everything when they want it, and she's saying that it's all dead weight.
Yeah.
Like, what does she mean by that? I look forward to exploring her character in the future games because she's kind of speaking my language right now. And I wonder if she's going to be a good guy or a bad guy.
Yeah, right.
But at the moment, I'm thinking, yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah. I've learned that finding truth in all the information there is like finding a needle in a haystack.
Right.
That's really profound. It takes a second to step back from that.
Because first off,
the haystack is knowledge and information. The needle is truth.
Truth.
There's a distinction.
Oh, there's a huge distinction
between knowledge and information and truth.
Yeah.
You can be flooded with information, with knowledge, with things that are in there that you know.
Yeah.
But the truth about them is much more illusory than that.
Very much so. But the idea of a needle in the haystack is that it does exist, that it is out there. There is truth.
I used the word illusory. I meant elusive.
Oh, very
I don't mean to say illusory. The truth is not illusory.
Well,
it's elusive. It could also be elusive.
It's probably both. But it is
elusive
also...
was what I meant to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good line.
Alexei and Veritas taught me this. I wanted to know the truth, so I decided to leave the Federation police, and Alexei took me in. I realized that I had settled into my new role at Veritas. Eventually, I succeeded in organizing a full-blown anti-U.M.N. resistance, and I became the strong leader that I always wanted to be. I called this new organization Scientia.
Yep.
Or Scientia.
Which means knowledge, so I find this interesting.
Yes. The truth will set you free is like their tagline.
Yep.
However, I learned a lot from this whole affair. Before you look for salvation in truth, you must question what the truth really is. It's a strange story. Once I was a member of the Federation Police, and now I command a resistance movement of millions of people across the star system. I wonder what Erich was looking for. What was the end of the world that he saw? Was he a preacher, like Alexi and the others said? Is the moral of the story that we didn't pay him what he deserved, so he became the Pied Piper of Hamelin? Where has he taken me? Maybe the captain's soul, which so resolutely refused the sound of that flute, is roaming somewhere too. If so,
Right.
I want to prepare a better world for when his heart is freed from that bewitching sound and he returns to us. I think that's what everyone would have wanted.
There's an eschaton in this idea. There's this, that's almost a prophecy of sorts, right? That like the captain will return again.
Sure.
And let us prepare the way for his coming. And it's the way that she's doing it now in Scientia to be able to get through with that. The one part of Voyager saying that we didn't pay Voyager what he was worth so that he did crazy things. I mean, I know the Pied Piper story backwards and forwards. I don't know exactly what is being said there.
What just came to me.
Okay.
Is she referring to Udu? Didn't give him what was promised?
That's what, yeah.
Is she saying Dmitry Yuriev didn't give him what he was promised?
The music.
Is that the we she's talking about? Is it that society as a whole did not give him the attention, the love, help him with the inferiority complex he developed? Is it a combination of all of the above? But I think the one that hits closest to the mark of the Pied Piper story is that Udu did not give what was promised.
Interesting.
I don't know why she would include Udu as we necessarily. Again, that could be a translation issue.
Right.
Or maybe just an oversight on the part of the writer. Who knows? But that Udu seems to fit the bill of the false promise of the Pied Piper story.
It does,
better.
which means that the true ending of the Pied Piper story is yet to come. It is not something that was carried out throughout the game. It is something that is in the future.
Yeah.
Obviously, elements of it are here. But yeah, well, that remains to be seen, I suppose. That's more or less what I got from it as well, which is like, hey, well, I don't know that we've totally seen the end of the Pied Piper myth, story here.
Erich Weber will be coming back.
Yeah.
In the future.
So, and then the other part was where she says, the truth will set you free, but you have to question what the truth is. I can't remember the exact line, but after you question it, then are you good? And how many times do you have to question it? And does question mean perpetually always question it? Or is, to harken back to our discussion last week, is there some point where you
have to accept.
You can act now. You can do something now.
Yeah.
It's okay that you don't know everything, but do what you do know.
I'll read it again. I learned a lot from this whole affair. Before you look for salvation in the truth, you must question what the truth really is.
That's great.
I think.
But how many times?
Yes, how many times is the key? I think what I would pull from that is just make sure that before you hastily sort of like grab onto something.
Yeah.
And at first glance or at the first opportunity that what you believe and have wanted the truth to be.
And it looks shiny and it looks like it's right
promising.
There. Yeah. And you want it to be true.
Question it first.
Very, very
You don't
true.
have to question
very
it
true.
for the next 50 years.
You shouldn't.
But just question it first before you just automatically
Here's
latch
the weird
onto
thing,
it.
though. Maybe you should sometimes question it for 50 years.
Sometimes it might require that.
Sometimes, yeah. But it's enough to just say that, there's truth out there. And
how about we say at least question it once?
There you go. At least one time, but infinite questioning is not good either. So less than infinity, but more than one.
More than that never, and less than always.
Perfect. There's a nice sweet spot in there, and Melissa, it seems, has found it. But we'll see what her fate is later.
I think that's a good note to leave off on. I really enjoyed it.
This is awesome. I really liked that game.
Yeah, I
didn't know what to expect.
I thought it was actually really quite good, and I think it's a good idea to look at this before playing Xenosaga 2. I really do.
Yeah.
Because, again, this was context. This is a story that was supposed to be in that game that didn't make it in.
Yeah.
So it's probably a good idea to have this as a supplement to the stuff we're going to be looking at in Xenosaga 2. But for next week, just so everyone knows what we're playing up to, what we're going to be covering in the first Xenosaga 2 discussion, play up to the part where you there's like a dinner scene in like a restaurant, and you have Xian and her brother Jin are there, and then there's Junior and Chaos. The four of them are together at this dinner. Get through that dinner scene. That's where we're going to stop. And then I believe Jin invites them back to his house. So in the next episode, we'll pick up from that scene where they go to his place and carry on from there. But that's where we're going to stop next week. So that's just so you know, that's where we're playing up to for next week on Xenosaga 2. Thank you for watching. We will see you next time. Peace out.